Ladies and gentlemen, broadcasting from the NBC Tower from a place we call Chicago, it's time to explore those tender moments of yesteryear. Join us as we delve into another exciting episode of those who lived and loved their jobs at the Big 89 during the vintage days. Ladies and gentlemen, broadcasting from the NBC Tower from a place we call Chicago, it's time to explore those tender moments of yesteryear. Join us as we delve into another exciting episode of those who lived and loved their jobs at the Big 89 during the vintage days of rock and roll radio. I'm Jeff Davis, and I used to work here too. Anyway, it's WLS Unwound, personalities of the music radio years. Stay with us as we listen to the folks that made the Rock of Chicago legendary for music in the Midwest. Here's your host, WLS historian and author, and a man with his own jingle, Scott Childers. Scott Childers.
And a great Saturday night, live from high atop the downtown Illy, in this case, here at NBC Tower. It's Scott Childers and a cast of hundreds here at the radio station. Wow. I'm telling you what, we have got 2 hours of absolute fun. So let's introduce who's here. Right here to my left, you know him as part of the Animal Stories news team, Tommy Edwards.
Snot-nosed Tommy.
Little snot-nosed Tommy.
All right. And I prefer to be called Ted Peacock. But nonetheless, I'm here, and it's been such a long time since I've been in this radio station. They've moved the bathroom, so I'm in big trouble.
They moved the whole place.
Yeah.
And then we have 2 Chucks, no waiting. I see we have Chuck Knapp and Chuck Buell.
Big Chuck and Little Chuck.
Yeah, what?
Well, we'll have to decide that after the broadcast.
Yeah, you got the Chuck and bookends right here.
I like it. Over to my right is the First Lady of News, Catherine Johns.
I am thrilled to be here, and like the rest of you, it's been a long time since I've been at this radio station, or frankly, any other. So we'll see how this goes.
It's a career, your career just drops after you leave here. So.
Yeah, sure did.
Well, speaking of a long time, over 50 years since he's been here. He was here for a little while and then ended up going to New York and has been on the air continuously for the last 50 years, a Radio Hall of Famer as well.
That's right.
Please say hello to Jim Kerr. Hi, Jim.
Hey. It was 51 years.
51
years.
Counting.
Yeah,
51 years since Tommy waved goodbye. Little Tommy was my boss, and he waved goodbye.
Yeah, well, I remember when I brought you up. You were down in the FM station.
I know, and he actually made it possible for me to be here at WLS, and he made it possible for me to move on from WLS within the company. But I was on Saturday night at 10. That was my show.
So this is your show.
So this is my time.
And you were on the world famous WLS float, St. Patrick's Day float.
Yes, I was.
The day before you started in New York.
Yes, I was.
That's amazing.
I had to leave the parade and go to O'Hare.
Unreal. Yeah.
And unlike most of the people in this room, Jim, you actually were on the air this week. So you had to come in after being on the radio.
Yesterday morning, yeah.
Yesterday morning, right. That's what I mean. Yeah. So, well, we've got a wonderful evening of recollection and a lot of great audio. And that's really thanks to our producers, Bill Shannon, as well as Ted Gordon Smucker, that found some of this stuff. But I just want to go around the room first. For those who know about my background, and I've been here at WLS for about, the last 5 years. I'm mainly part-time and fill-in, but I was a mainstay at 360, being the one that looked through the glass, and it's thanks to most of these people that are in this room that I'm in this business, and I say that sincerely. So you know where my inspiration came from. But Tommy, I want to talk to you, because you have a wonderful book out, and it really goes through your career and how you got here and what you did afterwards. But give us a little thumbnail sketch about that.
About what? The book?
About how you got here.
Oh, how I got here. Well, I grew up in Topeka, Kansas, and I was always listening to the radio. And my favorite disc jockey was a guy named Curtis, okay? And let's see, I can't remember, what was the first name? Anyway, he turned out to be Bill Curtis. Okay, and he was, the reason I liked him is because he was unlike any of the other disc jockeys was on the air. He had something to say. He would be talking about certain things. You could tell he was really intelligent. He was at Washburn University Law School, I guess, when he was also doing this. And then he moved to CBS and became one of the big shots of CBS News. But he was my hero. So I always thought if I could do anything, I would love to be like Bill Curtis. And that's who I listened to.
He was, and continues to be amazing.
Yeah.
And an anchorman and a guy that can be so serious. And Catherine, you understand this from being on the news side. I mean, he could be so serious, but he also knew how to make fun and be light. And that's one of the things you had to really learn working with Larry and then later with Fred.
Oh, yeah. They were light, for sure. And it was fun. I had done all news radio before I came here. So it was quite a switch doing a show with a jock. And we did pretty straight news. When I first got here, Jeff and I co-anchored the news, and we were serious about it. And then one day they called us into the general manager's office and said, we'd like Larry to interface with the news people. Now, y'all know Larry. How much do you think he liked the idea of interfacing?
No.
Yeah, not at all. But that changed everything. That was really the beginning of the ensemble morning show. And it was so much fun.
I was going to say, and you guys went to London, you went to Disney World, you went to so many places, too, which if you were just stuck in the newsroom, you probably wouldn't have been able to go.
Oh, probably not.
Yeah.
No, it was great being part of that show.
Let's talk to the Chucks. Let's talk to Chuck Knapp and talk about some of your experiences before you came to the Big 89.
So I came from the edge of the prairie out at the Lake Agassiz Basin, right there in western Minnesota, a long ways from downtown Chicago. I'm a sophomore in high school, and I hear that a station in Chicago has changed from a prairie station to a rock station. And I started listening when I was a sophomore to WLS, never thinking that I would get into broadcasting or never thinking that 7.5 years later I would wind up at this radio station. And it's always a thrill to come back to the rock of Chicago. Just really a tremendous honor.
Yeah, and we're so glad you're here. And the other Chuck, left Chuck and right Chuck. If you're listening in stereo, I think on the stream you can tell.
Yeah, of course. I feel like I'm listening to some of these stories because a lot of these stories were after I was there. I'm wondering if Jim and I were the older guys of this whole thing because a lot of these personalities, Edwards and the rest of them came after I was there. When I first started listening to this station, I was in Rapid City, South Dakota, and I was in junior high. In 9th grade, I had my first radio show, and I used to listen to WLS because we could get it with its 50,000 watts of power. And I would listen to Ron Riley, and I would listen to Art Roberts, who I thought were great. And I thought, man, I'd like to do that there someday. So what I would do briefly is I would listen to Ron Riley. I would write down all of his clever remarks about his invention for people who like to stretch their points and get a rubber pencil. And I would do that the next day on my show. I heard Art Roberts do the stuff that he did. And here's the thing. I stole a line from him just because I didn't understand it. When he said, this has been a work of art, I thought, well, that's classy. That's a clever way of saying that, you did a decent show. And I used to use that until one day, out of the blue, it snapped. He says that because his name is Art.
Yeah, this has been a work of Chuck.
Now, Jim, I heard a story. I did a little research, and I was told that when you worked here on the FM, when WLS-FM was WDAI, that you actually hitchhiked from Michigan to get here.
Yeah, it was a Sunday night, and it was cold. And I arrived here in Chicago about 4:00 in the morning on the first Monday of January, 1972. And I went to a restaurant called the Little Corporal and sat at like a counter that they had in the center of the restaurant, where I drank lots and lots of coffee until it was time for the radio station offices to open up. And I went over to 360 North Michigan Avenue, and I went into the WDAI lobby, and I said hello to the secretary there, whose name was Phyllis, and I said I wanted to see the program director because I heard they had an opening, and I brought my tape with me, and I had to hitchhike because there was no time to get the tape to the PD in time.
Well, that makes sense.
Because I was told there's an opening, they're going to make a decision real soon.
Right.
So the only way that I could get the tape was to just bring it myself. So I brought the tape. I went in and spoke to the program director, Steve Stafford, and then the general manager, Leonard Cohen. Not that Leonard Cohen, a different Leonard Cohen. And they hired me. I was flabbergasted. They hired me.
You were waiting for a no and you got a yes.
Yeah, well, I was just hoping to be heard. And so I ended up doing the morning show there at WDAI from January until, when was it? It was January 72 to March of 73.
Yeah.
When Tommy came in and he had a different plan for me.
Yeah.
And,
was Jim Davis also the program director when you were?
Jim Davis succeeded Steve Stafford.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And so he was the program director, and he was your colleague at WOR-FM in New York.
Yeah. Right. And so he got out here before I did, but we both were at a radio station, OR-FM in New York City. And it was starting to change, and things were a little bit different. And so the first thing that happened was that Jim got a job in Chicago at WDAI. And then Mike McCormick called me and said, come on, I want to talk to you. So I flew into Chicago and had a couple of meetings with him and the general manager, Paul Abrams, and went back to New York and waited for a phone call, and eventually came in and said, okay, and we made a deal, and that was it.
And Tommy, as the program director, brought in Bob Surratt from WBBM-FM and Yvonne Daniels from WSDM. And they came in as full-time people. Bob was 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
And then Yvonne was the overnight person. I was the first of the FM people that he brought over, but his plan was that I would be the weekend and fill-in guy. I was the youngest among that group. But for the first, I guess, 5 or 6 weeks, I did 10 to 2 at night because we were waiting for Bob to be able to come over. And then later on, when Charlie Van Dyke left and Fred moved to mornings and Bob moved to afternoons, Steve King came to us from WNAP in Indianapolis, and those were Tommy's hires.
Yeah, well, Steve was also at BBM-FM. So I took Steve King, Bob Surratt, Yvonne Daniels from SDM, and the music director.
Jim Smith.
Jim Smith, who was the music director of BBM. I think the reason for that really was I had come from New York and I was at an FM station, and we were starting to really get into the ratings, trying to take them away from WABC, which is the enormous, big, huge radio station. And I realized when I got to Chicago, the biggest problem that WLS was going to have was erosion for FM. And so we had to do everything possible to keep people from tuning into FM. And FM had some personalities. Yvonne, we had, and Bob Surratt at WBBM. And Steve King was also sounding terrific. And the music over at BBM was great. So when things caused certain people to leave WLS, I called BBM, and I called the individuals, to the point where the general manager called me one day and asked if he could come over too.
Was that John Catlett?
Yes, true story. And so that's basically how that the whole team got together.
Amazing how that happened.
And Larry was over at CFL.
At CFL, and we are going to talk about that yet, but we do have to take a break. But before we do, let's talk about let's take a listen to one of the people that we've talked about who was here at the beginning, one of the original Swingin' Seven, and that's Bob Hale.
Hi there, I'm Bob Hale from the original WLS crowd way back in it was back there then. Midnight shows. I'm talking midnights now. Midnight, it was a 4-person operation. You had the guy who sat out under the towers, where it's Tri-State Toll Road now, Tinley Park. One man there, one man in the studio control room, one man spinning the records. Okay, that's 3 guys, and then you got the disc jockey, and so there you are with your crew of 5 or 6 people, and most of the audience say, gee, I wonder what it's like to be alone and working a radio show at that hour. Well, for those of us in Chicago, we were never alone. The second, third, fourth wave of disc jockeys that came along, when they first come into Chicago and take your place at a station like WLS, and it happens all over the country, the guys who were there at point 1 and now at point 2 or 3 look back and say, oh my gosh, they just don't have it. Well, of course they had it, or they wouldn't have got to Chicago, but they had it in a different way. And every busload of new disc jockeys, whether they come in a busload or one at a time, has a different style, a different way, a different approach. And that's what holds the audience. And that second wave, third wave of disc jockeys that came to WLS, they built a heck of a big, solid audience. Now, we did have a big crowd listening to us. But the next bunch of guys that came along, they really built up an audience, and I applaud them for that.
Wow. There you go. Bob Hale. We're going to hear more from him and some of the original disc jockeys that were here at WLS as they debuted back in 1960. We got to take a break. More coming up from WLS Unwound.
Now back to WLS Unwound. Personalities of the music radio years. Right here on the Big 89 WLS. Where else?
And one of the biggest Beatlemaniacs we had here in the 60s was Ron Ringo Riley. Let's take a listen.
Hi, Ron Riley here, and nice to have you with us. A lot of fun. Remember the oldies. And one of the oldies I remember was Clark Webber, and everybody used to say, Riley, say something bad about Webber. Well, got something kind of bad about him. Believe it or not, Clark was a pilot. Yeah, I thought he'd pilot here and pilot there. Well, he decided that we were going to fly together to this hop we were doing in Indiana, and I said, Clark, rather ride 2 hours and fly in 15 minutes with you. He said, no, let's go. So it was okay going down there. Coming back, though, we got the idea that we were going to mess around. And I said, Clark, let's just get back to Chicago. And Clark said, hey, there's a train down there. Watch this, just like World War II. And he put nose down, and we followed it all along the top of freight cars. And he was going, tat, 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 tat. I said, get out! Well, we made it back home, and the last time I ever flew on an airplane with that joker, or even rode in a car. Say something bad about Webber? Well, that was bad.
You know, Clark Webber actually had a pretty good idea there because, you know, if you gave him flack on the ground, he'll take you up for a little flight. And that could be kind of an issue, wouldn't it? That's for sure. We're in the middle of our WLS Unwound, and just before we went to the break, we were talking about the jocks that got things started here when we went to rock and roll May 2nd, 1960. And Bob Surratt actually did a great little montage when they moved from the old studio into the new studio back in 1976, and I know, Tommy, you were here at that point. Let's take a listen to that, and we can talk about it after it's finished.
At any rate, though, if you've ever gotten rid of a car that you had for a long time, even though the darn thing doesn't work right anymore, and you get attached to it, and you hate to see it go. Well, that's the case here with old Studio A. And we got to thinking, if you could go into a radio time machine and tune around and hear some of the sounds of the past 16 years in this old studio, what would you hear? It's almost like that old Twilight Zone show. Do you remember the show where some guy finds an old radio and he plays with it and he gets the old-time radio shows out of it? Well, that's what we're going to do right now. Let me switch it on and let's go back in time.
The increase in the range is the first... 10 o'clock. It's a good time for the good sound of summer on the Art Roberts Show.
There's the one with the boing boing. Well, we have our guest team disc jockey to introduce to you right now, and as usual, we'll do it by reading a little bit of the letter that we got in. It was letter number 4.
WLS has presented with portions pre-recorded Newscope from Chicago. Stay tuned now for The Ron Riley Show. WLS, the station with personality. say. It's been one of those days, you know. I mean, really. Increase in the...
On top of a pizza, all covered with cheese.
Both are
Officially 4 degrees in Chicago. It's 4 o'clock.
It's a good time for the good sound of Chicagoland 65 on the Dex Card Show.
Increase in the range is the first.
Good morning, everybody. That's that happening story from the top 89 of 1967. Our time is now 8:21. LS year-end review time on the Clark River Show. 28 degrees, and don't you forget it, that starting Monday, January 1st, you can hear Bernie Allen 1 hour earlier, beginning at 10 a.m. on 890.
That's most music time. Chuck Buell on a Sunday night, baby. Pull up your popcorn, soda pop, or whatever. Sit back and gaze upon it. You're in it. The second out of 89 in a row.
Increase in the range.
Yesterday. 8:51. WLS Most Music Time with Chris Stevens. Stick your face right up close to the radio now, honey. And I will stick a hit in your ear. Especially for you, baby. Turtles.
Increase in the range is the first.
Next week, we're going to take some of this old studio with us across the hall, and the beat will go on, LS.
The beat goes on.
So, Chuck Buell, Chuck Knapp, I want to ask you, when I listened to that, it sounded bigger than life. Did it feel bigger than life to you guys when you were here in the studio?
It's the hot seat. It's where everything happened. Being on at night, I could talk to a guy in New York, pick up the next phone call, and it would be a guy in San Francisco. A third call would be from an oil worker in the Gulf of Mexico, and another one would be from somewhere up in the Arctic and way up in Canada. That was the audience at night on WLS. You bet it was a hot seat.
I got a call one night from somebody that said, Chuck, there's somebody calling you off the coast of Vietnam on an aircraft carrier, and they want to talk to you.
Wow.
That's what I said. I said, okay. So I went on the phone, and these guys are so far. We yelled at each other to be able to hear each other. Now, the story was that I got afterwards is these guys worked in the ship's radio shack. They strung antenna up all the way around so they could get LS from Chicago while they were over there. And then when they called, this is now way before internet and all that. So their call went from their ship to, I think, a satellite, and then came back down, hit the land, went on a landline across Asia, and they sent it back up to another satellite, and then they sent it down somewhere in the States, and they fed it to Chicago, and then they fed it from wherever it landed here in Chicago to the regular hard lines, and then they sent it to us where we were, too.
Wow. That's absolutely amazing.
One of the great sponsors of the all-night show is Grand Spalding Dodge.
Mr. Norm.
And it's a great, Mr. Norm. Yeah. And there was a story that we got from Grand Spalding Dodge that a father and a son from South America actually flew up to Chicago, bought a car at Grand Spalding Dodge and drove it back home to South America.
Yeah, true.
That is the power of advertising.
Did they pick up some Heilmann's old style for the ride?
They probably did. They had to. All right, we got to take a break, but coming up, we're going to talk to somebody that Tommy knows very well. We're going to talk about good old Uncle Lair. That is next on WLS Unwound.
We're back with more WLS Unwound. Personalities of the music radio years. That pretty well says it right there. WLS.
In 1973 is when I first came to Chicago and WLS. And after I talked to the boss and everything, Larry Lujak was on the air, but he only had a week to go before his contract expired, and he went over to WCFL. So I walked into the studio with him, and I just said, "Hi there, Larry. My name is Tommy Edwards." And I put my hand out, and he said, "You're the guy from New York." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "I don't shake hands from people from New York." And I just looked at him, and and then he just turned his head, and I'm like, oh, jeez. So I left. Now, that was the beginning of my meeting with Larry Lujak. I became such great friends with Larry over the years, and even up to the point of when we lost him, when I had phone calls with him, and he was going through such terrible things. And he just needed to talk to somebody and get things out and all that stuff. But I felt so bad for him. And anyway, when Judy called that night and she was crying and she told me what had happened, and it's just something I can still remember, and I just wish I could forget. Anyway, but when he was on the air, nothing got in to the point where he became embarrassed or thought, what am I going to do with this? He shared whatever problem he had on the air with the audience, like this.
WLS. Larry Luchak, 248. WLS, souvenir from 1970. Whoops, what is wrong with that? Okay, that's Dusty Springfield. Dusty, you have another drink. We'll have slam number 45 in there, John. Time out on the field. A malfunction in our cheap equipment. Music, WLS. Larry Luchak at WLS. I may file a grievance with the union. I don't have to put up with cruddy equipment like this.
And he was so off the cuff and right away, and he knew what to do. We were talking about a story you'd mentioned before we went on the air about a commercial tag that he was supposed to read that he couldn't find.
That's right. I mean, we had paper copies of every commercial we had to read live, and there were a ton of live commercials. Anyway, so there was some tags to some commercials, and he was, he was on the air, and he played a commercial for a movie that was opening up, and. So then the commercial ends, and you hear Luchak going, wait a minute, I think I'm supposed to say something after that. Oh, God. Wait a minute. That's not it. I mean, maybe it's down here in the trash can. Oh, wait a minute. I think I found it. Now playing.
And Catherine, what was it like? Was it intimidating to work with Lair after hearing him on the air all those years and then to be in the studio with him?
No, he was really welcoming. Like he was so generous about sharing the spotlight. And I know that kind of goes against his image because he pretended to be a hard ass all the time.
Oh, yeah.
But I really was able to develop as a personality because Larry, if we had something worth saying, he would take the whole spotlight of the morning show and shine it on Jeff or on me or on Les and let us have those moments. And of course, he always had the funniest line about them. There was that. But I learned to be a personality and not just a newsreader working with Larry.
And I think it empowered you as well, because I can remember several occasions where he would make a mistake or he would read something and it's wrong, and you'd just go, yeah, nice going, Lair. And he would just laugh. He would love that. Yeah. He'd love that.
Yeah, and he was great to work with.
When jocks get off the air, they generally just come down, back to the lounge and they relax a little bit and think, okay, I hope I had a good show today. Luchak would go back to the lounge and spend the rest of the day planning for tomorrow's show. He'd be reading the newspapers and he would always write out little reminders of certain things. And when he would come into work the next day, he had all of this material that he had written out on small little notes, and then he would bring them into the show. And it was just incredible the amount of work and dedication that he put into every single show. It was remarkable.
And this is before the internet. This is before having Google in front of us. You had to do all of this work beforehand.
Oh, my gosh. He would hate having all the internet and the Google. And, I can imagine some of the things he'd say about Google. Anyway, that was just the one. And his number one high-tech machine was a fax machine that provided him with copy, where he could actually send a letter. He used to send letters to my son complaining that, basketball, because I did the public address for the Bulls for so many years, and he would be complaining about the way the game is and all this other stuff, and he'd write them out on that typewriter of his, which is over at the Museum of Communications, and that's how he would communicate, and that was his high-tech thing.
And I would see when I would come up to the station when I was younger and a listener, and I would see all of the reams of paper from the teletype. Mm-hmm. He would get in at like 3 a.m. just to go through the teletype and find what he could find and what he needed.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. He just, and he would make notes along and see, this is where kind of how animal stories started. And I'm not sure if you want to get into that right now.
I think we're going to talk about the clunk letter first. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that before we play it.
He got a lot of mail. I mean, Larry Lujak was the number one disc jockey to get mail at that radio station. And it was a lot of people who would be saying, can I get your autograph or this or that? And animal stories was a different thing. But sometimes people would have complaints or about the radio station or about Lujak. And he would get the clunk letter of the day.
Larry Lujak, clunk letter of the day. Comes from a girl who does not sign her name. Her initials are TM. Dear Larry, comma. I am 16. Well, right off the bat, I lost half my listeners. They dialed out. I am 16 and have just broken up with my boyfriend. Now I lost the rest of them. Before, I wasn't sure, but after many sleepless nights, I found myself discussing the matter thoroughly with my friends, and we have come to the final and fair conclusion that it was definitely all his fault. It wasn't so bad at first. I mean, I didn't mind staying home on Saturday nights watching TV while he went out drinking with the guys. But I had my fill when, after 5 months of so-called steady dating, he nonchalantly, during a pep assembly, walked out onto the gym floor at school and in front of all those people screamed out, "I'm Perry Mason! Give me a case!" At first I found this rather humorous, but now I find it so repulsive that when I think of this whole thing is repulsive, and I'm not even going to read the rest of the letter. I recall last week definitely making the statement that I wanted exactly 0 letters concerning these teenage love affairs. I got a lot of bad comment on the last one I read. Because you see, girl, whoever you are, TM, to the rest of the audience, this is just plain sickening. This is just real garbage. They don't care. I'm not running a bubblegum jelly bean teeny bop operation here. I'm programming to adults and sophisticated, intelligent high school and college students and mature second graders, and they just don't want to hear this, nor do I. I mean, we can all sympathize with you because we were all 16 once and had the same problems, and our love problems were just as dumb as yours, but we don't want to hear about them. We don't want to be reminded, especially in the dinner hour for some people. To give you an idea of just how sickening this sounds to everybody in the audience, I'm going to play a song here that was number 1 in 1960. That was 10 years ago, and you were only 6, so you probably don't remember this. But listen to the words, and we find your letter just about as sickening as this next song.
Super Jockey! WLS!
Oh, jeez. Oh, wow. You know, he would get letters from his listeners, obviously, but he would also get letters from celebrities, too. He got an invitation. We got an invitation to come down to Governor Jim Thompson's Christmas party down in Springfield. And we thought, oh, that was great. Now, Governor Thompson just walked in on us one day when we were doing animal stories, and which was a different story. We'll tell you about that later. But anyway, we got this letter saying, why don't you 2 guys come down to Springfield? I'd like to be a guest of honor for our Christmas party. And he goes, there's no way we're coming down there. He says, look, you know how long it takes to drive down to Springfield, Illinois? You know that you'll probably be eating all the candy and the goodies and drinking all the punch and stuff like that. By the time we get there, there won't be anything. No way. And then he'd rip up the invitation. So that was the clunk letter, and that's how he treated
letters. Unbelievable. Absolutely amazing. Well, we will talk more about animal stories and a little more. And we're also going to talk about some of the unsung heroes in the background, too. The engineers and the producers and some of the great original songs that they came up with here. WLS Unwound continues here next on 890 WLS.
This is 890 WLS-AM Chicago. 94.7 WLS-FM HD2 Chicago. A Cumulus media station.
Hello, we're still here. Welcome back to WLS Unwound. Personalities of the music radio years, reliving it as if it were yesterday. Just don't ask me what I did this morning. That I don't remember. WLS.
And let's hear from one of our WLS alumni that was not able to join us tonight, and that is Charlie Van Dyke.
Charlie Van Dyke in the morning. WLS.
Charlie Van Dyke here with the WLS memory about the incredible coverage of the 50,000 watt station. It was a cold, dark winter morning, a little after 5. The phone call came from the tower at O'Hare, telling me that a pilot wanted to talk to me. So they set up the two-way conversation. Pilot said he was the captain of a charter flight of Chicago people, and they were about to wake everybody up for breakfast. WLS was coming in loud and clear. Would I play a dedication to the flight? They were going to pipe the audio into the cabin. Well, sure. Got the flight number, agreed to wait about 10 minutes until everybody was awake. I said, okay. And then he said, well, don't you want to know where I am? Well, yeah, sure. He said 32,000 feet over Iceland. Now that's a long-distance dedication.
WLS. And Charlie Van Dyke still has those great pipes, doesn't he, Jim?
Yes, he does.
You do too.
Yeah, but well, the thing is, I'm from Michigan, and it's not like as far away as Iceland. But it was a different place from Chicago. I'm from Detroit. We had our own identity. We had our own local music hits and our own big DJs. But the big, powerful signal of WLS would come, just blasting in there at night. And like a lot of kids, I loved turning the radio to the big 89. And when I was in junior high, it was after the days of Clark Webber and Ron Riley and Dex Card and Art Roberts. When I listened to WLS at night, I was listening to Chuck Buell and I was listening to Chris Stevens. And I was so excited to meet Chuck Buell tonight. I want to hear him on the air.
Oh, we could hear him right now. Should we do that? Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Chuck Buell Show on your much more music station.
89 WLS.
802 LS, more music time on the all-new Chuck Buell Show from the Big 89. Talk to me, Aretha. Chick says it like she feels it. Aretha Franklin, you gotta think, babe.
89 WLS plays more music.
Bring this one on home one time. Heavyweight hit coming on.
Things go better with Coca-Cola when you're talking it over.
Sandy Posey drinks Coke after Coke.
Chuck Buell, 89 WLS.
I'm a U.S. male. Ladies and gentlemen, Chuck Buell. You and music.
WLS.
I've got 802 here at WLS. What time do you have where you are? Neil Diamond, honey. Oh, my. Calling your name. Shiloh, dig it.
Young child, Shiloh, when I was young.
That's such a great song. That's Neil Diamond at Shiloh with Chuck Buell at WLS. Cold night. Wow, I'm going to be so glad. I got a level. I'm going to be so glad when the warmer weather comes. Boy, I'm getting tired of this stuff. Friday night at the Edison Light in South Bend. You know where that is. The Rugbies will be there. Rugbies, they sang groovy stuff. Advanced ticket sales at the Pit Stop. That's on Miracle Lane. And also at Mail M1. It's the Rugbies, Edison Light, South Bend, Friday night. Be there.
Airport, it comes roaring at you with a
89 WLS. Operator 1.
Chuck Buell Pisces Power, baby. WLS, it's 8:10 at the Big 89. That's the most music time. Saluting the Tomcats Aurora East, part of the Elite Eight. They meet Peoria Spalding Friday night. Get into the quarterfinal games, man. Dig this song. Little sister, you're the one. That song gets right down inside of me and does something. Oh, and what it does. Little Sister, You're the One with Chuck Buell at WLS. Aha! Time for another episode with Mutt and Jet. Blair, that honey I saw you with the other day, you've got yourself a winner.
Yeah, Chuck and Levi's from Litton's Pant Pit, you just can't keep them away from you.
89 WLS.
You know, Jim, you were right. That dude is smooth. Oh, yeah. Wow. Man. All right. I know we were going to talk about engineers, but I want to ask you a question about that because, you know, when you and Chris Eric Stevens got here, you were the new guard. I mean, the first wave was the Swingin' Seven. Then afterwards, Ron and Art came in, and you two were the young guys. And if you remember, that whole ad campaign was really around that. You know, it's more fun when you're young. And you really changed the sound and the complexion of the radio station.
And that was the whole goal of it, too, is to do exactly what that was, which is why they promoted so much in that youth type of thing. And our energy level was a lot higher. And in talking about some of the engineers, now those engineers had been there forever. I mean, really, some long-term people. I remember one a music spinner. He was a member of the Musicians Union. Had been there.
Carl Davis.
Carl Davis.
Yes, the Colonel.
Yeah, and he used to tell me how he was on Barn Dance with Gene Autry.
Yeah, he was a member of the Cumberland Ridge Runners.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
And just a super nice guy. But
and a good friend of Pat Boone, too.
Yeah, they spent a lot of time singing with Lula Bell.
Yeah. Right, Lulu Bell and Scotty. Yeah. And Tommy, I was going to say, wasn't that how you guys were able to put that together with Debbie Boone when the whole "You Light Up My Life" was going on? Was that a connection there with Carl?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Carl was just one of the things that amazed me was when different stars would come in so we could record for music people. You know, the interview show we did. And I would usher them into Studio B, and I'd introduce them. This is Al Rosen, our engineer, and this is Carl Davis. And they'd go, you're the real Carl Davis? Are you serious? Yeah. The Kentucky Colonel, Carl Davis? Yes. They would go nuts because of the history with that man. And he was the record turner. I mean, originally he was with his buddy, and they were on the air together. Carl and Hardy. Mm-hmm. But after that, he was a member of the union that was the only group of people that could touch turntables and put needles on records and all that stuff. I mean, we had so many unions at the radio station. That was one of them. Another union would manage the equipment. Another union would be the people with the voices, and another one would be one that Catherine can tell you about, that they could...
They wrote copy, and they took our recording from when we phoned in from City Hall with a live report.
Right, and if you wrote a story and somebody else like Linda Marshall is going to use it later, the NABED person had to actually...
go through them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, should we go back to Carl Davis?
Yeah.
And this is the kind of thing that we would do in the production studio. And one day, and John Landecker would always call, not always call, but whenever he called, he'd say, hey, guys, can you give me like an hour? I said, an hour? Yeah, because we were always very busy. And we'd say, what do you got? And he said, I've got a bit. I'm working on a bit. We know what that means. So we say, okay, what time are you going to be here? And he would be there in the afternoon, and we would start working on something. And he would start to tell us what it was all about. And we said, okay, what do you want us to do? We'll do anything you want. And Al Rosen, who was the production engineer, would get all of the material. Now, this is long before digital, long before working with computers and everything. This is reel-to-reel tape and cartridge tape, and the colonel in the other room with putting needles on record albums and stuff like that. And so John Landecker would come up with special bits, and that's what we would work on. And we would work on it and probably get it done in a day, maybe 2 days. But when you finally heard what John Landecker did, the radio station showed you it was not only what the personalities did on the music, it's what they did between the songs.
And it was a collaborative effort. You all were involved.
All of our voices, too, yeah.
Well, I think of Make a Date with the Watergate, first of all. And we're going to hear that one, guys, yeah? Let's play that one.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. At our convention, Miami, FLA, a campaign across the USA. Let me make this perfectly clear. Let me stick it in your ear. They said, hey, babe, make a date with the Watergate. My fellow Americans, I said, hey, honey, make a date with the Watergate. And Martha Mitchell says, do, 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 do. Election committees never ever give it away. Everybody has to pay and pay. Let me make this perfectly clear. It can't be denied. My fellow Americans, I've got nothing to hide. Say, ain't it great? I said, hey, Sparrow, make a date with the Watergate. I said, hey, Joe, make a date with the Watergate. Yeah. Martha Mitchell, she say, do, 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 do. Personal lawyer, Counsel John D. He came from out on the island, my fellow Americans, standing at the telephone. He ain't exactly dialing. A bugger here, a bugger there. Washington's the place where they said, hey, babe, make a date with the Watergate. Let me make this perfectly clear, my fellow Americans. I said, hey, sugar, make a date with the Watergate. I said, hey, Sparrow, hey, all of you people, make a date with the Watergate. And the public say, do, do, do.
That is an incredible amount of work.
Oh, yeah. And it was a perfect example of what I was trying to say. We were trying to do something over here on AM, and when the FM was trying to get situated in Chicago, you wouldn't hear anything like that on FM. And John was like the king at night. Everybody just from all over. I mean, when the radio station decided to ask Arbitron, give us some ratings on the nation. Was there anything that we should know about on the nation? And the overwhelming response that we got from Arbitron about how many people were listening at night around the country.
Wasn't it around 9 million?
Yeah.
9 million people. That's crazy.
And the thing about John being able to do this and everybody working together is that we were very, very close. We had a group of guys, people, men and women, we called the Clique. And the reason why we called it the Clique was that our general manager, Marty Greenberg, once put out a memo saying, I think there's a clique going on in the station, and I wonder if it's going to be healthy. Well, we said, yeah, it's going to be healthy. We're the Clique, and it's all about this radio station, and it's all about working together to make it sound fantastic. And that's what we did. And we did it with Bob, too. When Bob Surratt would call and say, could I get about a half hour before I go on the air? I got a couple of ideas I want to put together. We said, sure. You just, when you hear it, and whatever you need, we've got. Yeah. We've got sound effects. We've got music. We've got reverb. We can do whatever you want. And this was, and then we would get ready for him, and he would be able to put it on the air that afternoon.
You know, some of the people that were at this radio station didn't feel that way and went across the river. We'll find out more about that when WLS Unwound continues.
This is 890 WLS AM Chicago, 94.7 WLS FM HD2 Chicago, a Cumulus media station.
We now return to WLS Unwound, personalities of the music radio years, with your host, Scott Childers, and whoever else happens to be in the studio.
WLS Chicago.
Oh, we got a lot of people in the studio. Tabby Edwards is here, Chuck Knapp, Chuck Buell, Jim Kerr, also Catherine Johns over here as well, and a host of thousands telling us what to do on the other side of the glass. I want to go to the Napper now because we have the two sides of Chuck Knapp. Did you guys know there was two sides to Chuck Knapp?
Not.
Oh, well, take a listen to this.
Oh, there's the back side,
Solid rock from the Windy City. WLS Chicago. 11:30. Chuck Knapp Show. WLS. Sam Neely is the man who has just recorded a song called Lovin' You Just Crossed My Mind. Dynamite. It's 11:33.
In the morning, the time seems to fly. Loving you just crossed my mind.
Loving you. Just crossed my mind. Kind of a mellow flow from Sam Neely at WLS. It's 11:37 and supercharged excitement for 73. That's what you get at the Midwest's largest Grand Spalding Dodge with over 450 great new Dodges on display now at 3300 West Grand. You can pick the car and the price.
We'll rent more this year. You know why? Because at Genghis, we sell service. It's only our formal wear we rent.
And Genghis formal wear locations include the Harvey Dixie Square area, also Hillside Shopping Center in Deerfield in the Deerbrook Mall, and 24 other Chicagoland locations.
Chicago.
The Doobie Brothers Rock and Roll, Saturday night at WLS. Let's listen to the music. It's 11:41, and I'm Chuck Knapp. And if you're thinking about home furnishings this fall, don't do a thing until you check Sunday Midwest Magazine and the Chicago Sun-Times, because the entire issue is devoted to
the long life power cell from Everett.
Weekend weather.
Well, it's another nice weekend for staying indoors. Occasional showers tonight through tomorrow, then rain ending on Monday and turning cooler. A low tonight of 44 and a high later today of 58. The official Chicago temperature is 48, and in the Loop I have 48 degrees at WLS. I didn't have any trouble getting up today. 10:01, Chuck Knapp at the voice of labor. Wow, what an incredible day. Larry Lou Jack Super Jock bumper stickers are yours free at all Tom McCann stores. From Super CFL. Ready for a little mid-morning rock and roll? WCFL, 10:05. Now it's time for an Elmo Parsley record.
You can shake an apple off an apple tree. Shake it because I'm stuck on you.
WCFL at 10:07. That's Elvis and Stuck on You. It's what a day. 55 is going to be the high for later today. It's Chuck Knapp. I hope you have a super day, and I hope you get a chance to get outside and enjoy some sunshine.
Thursday. So where are you cleaning this morning?
There you are on Super CFL and on the Big 89.
I was in so much trouble at LS from the day I got there. I was always in hot water. I thought that Jim Kerr and DAI staff had the better music, the longer music, and when I got a chance, I would leave the 5th floor and sneak down to the 4th floor. I would cop the long version of Lion Eyes, bring it back up and play it on the Big 89, and I'd be blistered for doing that.
That's 7 minutes.
It was 7 great minutes of music. It was fantastic. Well, so I I was on before Lou Jack when I was on LS doing the all-night show from 1 to 5 a.m. And he was in by 3 or 3:30 and had his feet on the desk with his big stinky cowboy boots on. And he was doing what he did, and then he would come in and we'd have a very brief exchange. So when he left and went to CFL to do Afternoon Drive, I think he knew I was in trouble with Mike McCormick at LS. There were several other things like ledge walking and a number of other things that went on.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I was in really hot water with McCormick. And at one point, McCormick said, "You don't sound like you sounded when I hired you from the air check of Quixie in Dixie in Atlanta."
Now, let me ask you that, first of all, Chuck and Tommy, because you replaced Mike McCormick. I just got a bunch of memos courtesy of Sandy Bailey, who is Bill Bailey's wife.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they chronicle when records started there and Bill. They started almost the same time. And between 1971 and 72, she has about 20 to 25 memos. And he just talked down to everyone. Now, I've been a program director, and I know when you have to be stern, but I also know when you have to rally the troops. And to me, it seemed like he would rather just kind of go with the corporal punishment side.
My initiation the first night was worse than what John Lendecker talked about with Bob Surratt a couple of weeks ago when they were reminiscing for an hour about WLS. And you can hear the Scotch tape going like this, and they were wrapping it around my arms. And I couldn't. We had a live copybook, and we had 2 live spots back to back, but my arms are bound in Scotch tape, so I can't even turn the page when I'm at the end of Mr. Norm's Grand Spalding Dodge. I got nowhere to go. And then the door opens, and in comes a guy with a white sheet, and I thought maybe it was a ghost or something, and he's carrying a torch. And this big black hand,
wait a minute,
this big black arm and black hand comes out with this torch and lights the copybook on fire, and then they all leave the control room.
There was some hazing that went on at WLS.
Yes, and that was part of the initiation of first night.
Yeah, I was the victim myself.
It was Sandy Bailey's husband that was under the white sheet and had the torch and was setting the copybook on fire. So I'm in trouble. So when Lou Jack goes across the street to CFL, he calls me up and says, "Hey, Dad, how'd you like to work an earlier shift? We've got the Chris Eric Stevens shift open." And I figured I better take it and get the heck out of here. And that's what I did.
Man, oh man, that's crazy. And so many went back and forth. And Jim, I want to just really quickly ask, I mean, were these shenanigans that happened on the 5th floor where the AM station was, did that also permeate down to the 4th floor, especially since you had Mitch Michaels there? I know that there was...
Mitch Michaels is a great guy, and I love Mitch, but WLS was a lot wilder than WDAI. Wow. It was really a lot wilder. Wow. And there was hazing that took place. It was good natured. I mean, Gil Gross was a master of it. Lyle Dean. I mean, there would just be weird things like, you know, the news was supposed to come on and the newscaster wasn't there, and you'd go into a panic and wonder what you're going to do, and then they had pre-recorded the news. And
Fred Winston and J.J. Jeffrey were instigators.
Well, J.J. Jeffrey, I mean, we can't talk about some of the J.J. Jeffrey things that were done, but they were... Well, they weren't in good taste, but they were fun. And everybody understood, right, Tommy? I mean, there wasn't a meanness thing.
No.
You know, I mean, they used to put a little light bulb next to my name on the memos, on the bulletin board, because I was Mr. Light, because I was the 20-year-old dumb kid working there, you know, and that was kind of a way of implying that I wasn't very bright, you know, but this was being part of the club.
Right.
Yep.
You know, I got to watch some of the most incredible talent in the history of radio. It was a master class. And sometimes I got teased a little bit. It was worth it.
And Tommy, when you got there and you walk into this nut house, what do you think?
Well, I didn't know what to think because obviously I worked at a station in New York and it was under the Drake format and it was really controlled. I mean, everything was controlled. But I got here and you could tell it was unusual. As far as McCormick was concerned, I kind of witnessed some of what you were talking about in the office, not on the air, but things that were going on in the office. Ron Jacobs, the legendary PD of KHJ and down San Diego too, and then he was over in Hawaii, the Huda guy, right? I remember answering the phone one evening, and he said, "Can I speak to McCormick?" And I said, "He's yeah, let me go get him. Hold on a second." And I put him on hold, and I come back. McCormick said, "I don't want to talk to him. You tell him to call me later." So I said, I told him, I said, Mike is busy right now. He can't talk to you, but maybe you can call him again tomorrow. He said, I'll never call him again. He says, I'll tell you what, he's the most ridiculous person I've ever had to deal with, And I thought, oh God, don't be yelling at me. I didn't do it. Anyway, that was Mike McCormick. I mean, he just was in his own sphere and
make it pop. Was what he always said.
Yeah, but when Tommy Edwards took over as program director, he really made an effort to encourage the personalities in their different day parts to really develop their own style, while at the same time maintaining a consistent sound for the radio station. So he was able to create a situation where the station always sounded the same and it always sounded different simultaneously.
Everybody had their own thing. I mean, the jocks didn't all sound alike. They all had their own thing. And when John Guerin came in, he perpetuated that. That's what he looked for, and he said that's what's going to make the radio station successful. But what happened was when we found out that CFL was changing format, we were in a conference room, remember the big conference room, big table, and it was announced. And Marty Greenberg was our general manager, and he said, "I got a call. WCFL is changing format." What? What are they doing? He said, "Beautiful music." What? Oh my gosh. So we were all cheering. We thought, God, we knocked him out of the format. And he said, "Relax, everybody. This is bad news. It is not good news at all. We have been competing against this great radio station and we won, but we don't want them to go away because now we're going to have to compete against an entire band, the FM band." And he said, and that's not going to work. And he said, we're a AM station. We got a lot of static when people listen to music and all that stuff. They're playing stereo music over there. I know stereo AM just never really caught on. And so he says, we have to work harder now than we've ever had to work before. And
1976 is when that changed. And on the last day, you heard this on Super CFL.
CFL with the Eagles. Larry Luchek at 2:21. Got Young Blood by Bad Company coming up next. Also Money Honey, Ballroom Blitz, and Lonely Night. But now, listen as the vultures circle overhead.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are proud to present radio history. The next sound you hear has never been heard on this station before.
WLS.
And now, a history-making announcement.
After Monday, Chicago will have only one major rock and roll station on the AM dial. That, of course, is WLS Musicradio. And while all of us at WLS wish our former competitors the best of luck, we know that some of you may wish to continue listening to contemporary music. So we invite you to join us Tuesday at 8:90 on your radio dial. WLS. Now, more than ever, the rock of Chicago.
WLS.
Hey, Fred, stick it in your ear. It's 22 minutes past 2 o'clock. Boy, are they going to feel silly when they find out we were just kidding about this whole deal.
And of course, as we know, Uncle Lair did not leave CFL. He stayed to play the world's most beautiful music. And we'll talk a little bit more about Lair and animal stories, plus the person we just heard, Fred Winstead. We've got that coming up as WLS Unwound continues.
We now return to WLS Unwound, personalities of the music radio years. With your host, Scott Childers, and whoever else happens to be in the studio.
Well, we have a lot of people in the studio, including Catherine Johns.
And it's been so much fun hearing the stories about the jocks that I worked with and the ones that were before my time. You know, WLS also had some amazing news people, and one of them was Lyle Dean.
Hello, fellow Fred fans. Lyle Dean here. I've known Fred since we were both news reporters for Coil in Omaha in the late 1960s. Fred was good, but his personality must have felt stymied in the role of a serious rock and roll newsman. Yes, there really was such a thing. I visited Fred when he became a DJ in Dayton. His on-air persona had blossomed. Well, he was good as a newsman. As a DJ, he became the wild and funny guy millions knew over the years. After Coil, we got to work together again at WLS in the morning drive and again at WFIR. His unpredictable humor was the hallmark of Fred. He dragged me out of being a humorless news anchor, and his antics humanized me. Case in point was our Choose Your News feature, where I would offer him teases about 3 kicker-type stories I had collected in the newsroom. Fred chose one, and I tried to deliver it without comment. But Fred would comment, interrupting. It was a popular bit, but my news director thought it was inappropriate for a serious rock and roll newsman, so he regularly complained to the general manager, and more than once we were summoned to the manager's office after Fred's show. Program director John Guerin recognized Choose Your News as a hit and took our side in those meetings. However, on one occasion, not even John could save Fred from the manager's ire, to which Fred replied the line, "It's my show." The manager quickly responded, "But it's my radio station." Fred answered meekly, "Touché." Then, the next morning, we did it all over again. There are many more Fred moments. Some when he was belching on air. Some when he was simply exercising other bodily sounds. And then when he delivered live commercials, you just never knew where his mind and mouth would take us. Such as when he read a Yankee Doodle commercial and ended with, "They'll yank your doodle dandy." His personality is that irrepressible, and we love him for it.
Amazing. Fred, and you went through all of that same stuff with Fred.
I did. I was lucky enough to work with Fred after Larry moved to afternoons, and boy, did we have a good time.
You know, that's really what made this radio station unique in the late 70s and into the 80s. As you had mentioned, Tommy, is thinking outside the box, you know, and that wasn't even a term then, but doing things that were value added for the listeners that they weren't going to get anywhere else on the dial.
Absolutely. When I was program director, and this is when Larry left, I thought I got to get somebody for the morning show. And Fred came in and said, "I want to do the morning show." And I said, "Do you realize what kind of restrictions you've got to be a morning DJ? You can't be up all night. You can't be partying every night and drinking." "No, I'll do it. I'll do it." Well, we tried it, and it was in the beginning, it was not all that good because he walked in with like a ream of jokes, and it just didn't work. And I said, "Fred, just be yourself. I mean, just open the mic and be yourself." And this is what would happen when Fred Winston would read a live commercial. Now, in this particular commercial, I happened to be in the studio at the same time, and I can't remember why I was in there, but he called me into doing something inside the commercial. A sound effect. Well, you'll hear it. It's for True Value hardware stores.
Hazy, hot, and humid today. We have the worst ozone in the city that we have ever had this year. That's bad. That's right. You'll go outside and you'll be going... As a matter of fact, if it were Christmas time right now and Santa Claus were outside with his bag full of goodies, he'd be going, "Oh, ho, ho, ho." That's how bad it is.
WLS.
This summer, they feature Burgess Outdoor Insect Foggers, one really efficient way to rid your backyard, patio, poolside, or campsite of annoying mosquitoes. In seconds, Burgess Foggers turn insecticide into a dense insect-killing fog. Come over here and turn on the fogger. Insect-killing fog. A fog, not a spray. Insects stay away for hours when you just press this button. It's available at your True Value Hardware store.
Musicradio, WLS.
Gets rid of bugs and disc jockeys and...
And you guys did this all the time?
All the time.
And yet, no blowback from the management?
No, that's why they did live commercials, because the clients wanted the disc jockeys to play with the commercials. So when people would say, did you hear that commercial for True Value Hardware Stores or Dominic's or something like that? No, they knew what they were doing.
The one I always remember from Fred was around Thanksgiving, and it was a Dominic's commercial, of course, and...
Is that when JJ was in the studio with him? Okay.
And it was about basting. He wanted to say a 10-pound turkey, but he said a 10-ton turkey. And JJ starts laughing, and then Fred starts laughing. And Fred had balloons for some reason. He had some balloons, and he holds it up because it was on video, and he says, "Can you imagine the giblets on that thing?" That's Fred. That's Fred. And it was, now did this happen in other cities? Anybody who wants to answer that? I mean, in other markets, or were we unique here? I mean, was our radio station unique in the way it presented itself? I mean, anything I've ever heard elsewhere was pretty buttoned up.
I think that's what the whole format was. Tight, bright, etc. Nothing happening.
Yeah.
But at that time at WLS, it was all personalities, and it was everybody sounded different. Everybody had their own thing going. And when John Landecker had his thing, when he would do those things between the records, and it was always timely. It was always something that people were talking about. And many times it would find itself into a boogie check, but in other times it would be something really special about something that was going on.
Do we want to do a boogie check? Shall we do one? Do you want to tell the people how the name Boogie Check came about?
There's a couple of reasons I've heard. Number one is that when J.J. Jeffrey had a mustache, and whenever he would have to go out for a date or something like that, he had to have a 30-second booger check. And we'd look in the mirror and see if the mustache was clean and all that. And the other thing was, do you remember that thing that you'd see all the time? This guy said, "Let's boogie," and everybody started saying it, like a boogie this, a big boogie this. And so John says, "Well, boogie check. I'm going to check your boogie." And so that's how it started.
Yes, you load on parent. It is that time again. My telephone number 591-3045. Be on the line, be on the air. This man has natural talent. Yes, it's true. Boogie check is straight ahead. Once again, the boy in the box who is I searches for that alleged humorous phone call. Who is you? Good evening. Good evening. Negatory Big Ben, over. WLS Boogie Check.
Yeah, what's your favorite sport?
I don't have any favorite sport.
How about baseball?
Baseball, lovely sport. WLS Boogie Check.
Hey, John, this is Yogi saying goodbye to you.
Creativity. I got creativity on my radio. Oh, Lord. Thanks. Stop! Wait a minute.
I can't take it! Stop it!
Down, Fred, down.
I can't take it. Terminate this boogie. Jack, Fred.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Am I talking on here?
Are you talking on here? I don't know. Whose mouth is it? Yes.
This is Kathy Frey.
Hey, Kathy Frey. Fay or Frey?
Frey.
Frey? As in frayed?
Yes.
Oh.
No.
As in torn and ripped? As in slightly abused?
No.
Oh.
Frey. I want to ask you two questions.
Oh, what are they?
First, I want to compliment you.
Oh, that's...
What a wonderful disc jockey you are.
Identify this sound.
And then
identify that sound. You know what that sound was?
What?
That was me patting myself in the back. Go ahead. What do you...
And I want to know if I won anything.
Yes, you did.
I did?
Yeah.
What did I win?
You've won the top 5 albums in Chicago.
Thanks.
Dynamite.
Well, either do I.
Jimmy Walker on
My mother and dad are right now listening to me on the radio.
Is your mom and dad there?
Yeah.
Why don't you have them come to the phone and you can all sing it and win?
Oh, okay. Mommy, come here.
Come on, Mom. Come on, Dad.
Here we come.
Oh, my God. We're going to be on the radio.
Oh, look at these singing, Ron.
Mom, come on.
There I go.
Wait a minute. Are they there? Wait a minute. Well, let me talk to your mom. Let me say hello to your mom.
Right here.
Family.
Hello.
Hi, Mom. How are you?
Oh, you're a wonderful disc jockey.
I know. Identify this sound. We've been through all that. Now let me talk to the man of the household.
Just a moment.
All right. Pass that phone around.
Hello?
Oh. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. How are you?
It's a pleasure to have your family as part of our audience.
It's a pleasure to hear you.
Very, very good. Now let me talk to your daughter again.
All right, ready?
All right.
Hello?
All right. Now everybody get around that telephone.
All right, well, they can't sit there. I'm going to sing it, though.
No. Everybody's got to sing it.
All right, everybody's got to sing.
Everybody's got. Otherwise, nobody wins.
Nobody wins if you don't. Ready? WLS.
WLS. Jim Kerr in the nighttime, and if you give me an opportunity, I am going to love you. Here's Barry White. I am going to love you. That's Barry White at 11:26 from WLS, reminding you of the fundraising dinner dance to benefit Provident Hospital May 26th at the Hyatt Regency O'Hare. For information, call 285-5300.
A winner, an hour on Winning WLS.
11:31. Are you feeling a little dizzy right now? Well, in commemoration of Mother's Day, remember what your mama told you. Here's 3 Dog Night.
Want some whiskey in your water, sugar in your tea? What's all this crazy question they're asking me?
If that ain't the way to have fun, I know somebody who does know the way. Here's Sylvia with Pillow Talk on WLS. Keep listening. In about 20 minutes, we'll tell you if this guess was too high or too low. There's a winner an hour on Winning WLS.
It's not the way you smile that touch my heart.
WLS. 11:47 on a Saturday night in Chicago with Skylark, Wildflower.
She's a free and gentle flower, glowing wild. She's a flower.
11:50. So you have 10 minutes to get home, and you are 50
miles away from where you're supposed to be, huh? Well, why don't you just forget about it? It'll be late anyway. And listen to Neil Diamond. Hot August night, here's Cherry Cherry on winning WLS.
Baby, love me, yes, you darling, my.
Now, Jim, you weren't doing that much screaming on 94.7, were you?
No.
But he fit in. He fit in perfect on WLS.
Now, how did you figure that out? Did you just recognize his talent from listening to him on the FM, or did they bring a tape up? Or
no, I listened to him, and I heard his voice, and I heard what he was doing and what he was saying between the songs or over the